everyone, and thank you to be here. So according to the European State of Tech produced by Atomico, 93% of funds invested in startups in 2018 were directed to only male-founded companies, sorry. This is only one, but pretty impressive figure that shows how little diverse the tech world is. I'm really happy to be here today with you three to talk about that. We'll really try to give you solutions and takes out for you to take back home and try to change the faces of tech. So Anisah, I wanted to ask you, so you're the founder of you're the director of Backstage Capital in London, but also the CEO of 23 Code Street, right? So you help women coding in England, but also in India. How do you feel the tech world is welcoming those entrepreneurs?
If the industry is welcoming?
Yeah, the underrepresented entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question if we're talking about tech as a whole, because I think it's really dependent on how we define being welcoming. So, for example, if you're working in a very femtech space, having women there is a really welcoming space. But what we tend to see as a trend across the industry is that right now we're operating in a space where 96% of developers are men. And with that, we see a real pushing to the margins of women who are learning how to train, women of color, especially black women who are developers right now is at 0.7% in the UK, which is a crazy number. And although it just sounds like we're saying diversity for the sake of diversity, the reason we need to include these people is because we don't have products and services that are currently working for everyone. And we see that the space becomes very competitive, there's this bro culture, and we're seeing more and more people trying to change that. And I think the answer to that is the tech industry is trying to become more welcoming, but in a very small bubble that a lot of us operate in.
Yeah, it's a very structural problem, right? Because it's the tech industries where finance and developing meets. So
right.
It's pretty like two male industries originally,
exactly right? Yeah, like funding in VC is obviously, especially in Europe and the US, a very white, middle class, middle-aged, like Oxbridge educated or the equivalent Harvard educated kind of demographic, and with that we see people hiring people who look like them, and it just perpetuates what the social demographic of those people are, and we need to find ways of trying to break out of those silos.
Tania, you started ELVIE 5 years ago. Did it change in 5 years, the way that you feel VCs or just the whole tech world welcomes women and diverse people?
Hi everyone, I'm Tania from ELVIE. I started the company 5 years ago. I'm a woman. Before then I'd never worked in tech. I'd never even worked in the private sector. And we've just raised a total of $50 million. So yes, the statistics still show that when it comes to VC funding, women are underrepresented, but obviously I'm an entrepreneur, I'm optimistic, things are getting better, and yes, it is definitely easier today than it was 5 years ago, primarily because now VCs are at least, they show the will. They know that they need to improve the funnel, they're actively looking for more female founders. So I would say there's never been a better time than now to be a female founder.
Gabrielle, you're an investor in France. Is it tough today to be a woman investor in the VC world?
Sure. I think VC investment is a tough job because you have to fight both internally to get the deal you want and to defend your point of view, and externally too, of course, to get the deals before the others and so on. But I'm not sure that women can't fight for this job, and actually I really like it. And I would say because it's you need both analytics skills and intuition. I'm sure diversity can bring many things to this job. And in France, we can see maybe two trends about that. First of all, there is one number that is quite shocking, which is 90% of the VC are men. So of course there are very few women, and but we can see that there are more and more women, and especially in the analyst and associate pool, I mean for the junior positions. So this is a very important trend I can see. And we can see for the junior positions more and more application from female junior, I would say. And the second trend is that I would say women attract other women, and so you have more and more funds that where you have lots of women in it. So there is a concentration of women in the funds and more juniors.
Okay. So we're talking a lot about diversity here, but a few days ago, a colleague of mine actually asked me, do you think it's the same to be a woman and to be black in the tech world? And I didn't know what to answer. Like, do you think the black people and the women face the same issue? I don't know. How do you define diversity, Anisah? And do you feel that all the underrepresented founders are facing the same obstacles, or are they different?
No. Okay, so for me and the way we work at Backstage Capital is we kind of define diversity as representing the society we currently live in. So for example, if you're from where I am, so you live in the middle of London, we have a super socio mix of demographics from ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, class backgrounds. But if you live, say, somewhere way more rural in, say, the Oxford countryside, it tends to be a lot more white, more middle class. There's a very different education background. So we kind of say that, is your workforce representing the society that you're trying to work for? And no, like the issues aren't the same, right? Because we all have different things that we require. We have different inclusions that we require. So it's more about companies being inclusive than diverse as well. So if you're saying, does a woman have the same issues as a black woman? Well, are they both mothers? Are they both, what are they? Do they have the same disabilities? Do they have the same network? So it's really dependent on so many different things. And I like using the mother example because, for example, in our office we have a mothering room, a parent room, a prayer room that kind of allows that flexibility for people to feel included in our space.
Don't forget to speak close to your mic.
Sorry. Hello. I can hear myself. It's about being able to give the inclusion as opposed to the diversity, because diversity will come if people feel safe in the space. Makes sense.
Tania, so you raised more than $50 million in total, I think, which is absolutely great. What do you feel underrepresented founders or women as you can bring to the tech world? Do they have something special to bring?
Yeah, I would agree with Anisah in that diversity is really important because it's about bringing cognitive diversity to the table as well. And as we've heard time and time again, when it comes to tech, it's a fairly homogenous group. But it's not just the gender or racial background, it's also a certain way of thinking. So it's about definitely bringing different ways of thinking to the table. And women can bring that too, as well as bringing people from very different backgrounds, be it different ages, different races. It all adds to the creativity and the innovation. But I would just add, sorry, for ELVIE in particular, I didn't explain what ELVIE is. We are connected devices for women. So we produce smarter tech for women, recognizing that the female consumer of tech has largely been ignored. So for us, our key group is women. So there's always a gender aspect to what we do. So as a company, we are 2/3 women, and it's important to have those women at the table.
Can I just add something? Yeah. I think ELVIE's proven something amazing over the last few years with more and more research saying that the femtech space is going to have 50 billion worth in the next 5 years. And ELVIE were kind of one of the first people to show investors that were a little bit different that, hey, this is a really valuable market. Have you seen other people who are coming up benefit from that?
Yeah, well, when we started 5 years ago, people just thought we were weird, like what were we doing? But it's quite odd how you can move from odd to cool quite quickly. And now obviously there's been a few startups, not just ELVIE, but some in Europe, some in the US, all focusing on the female consumer of health tech. And I think together, yeah, we've shown that there is potentially a big market. But ultimately, when I talk to investors, I can't play the gender card. I can't say invest in this company because we need to help women. You know, it needs to be like anything else. You need to really show the market size and the commercial opportunity, which when it comes to women has really been exploited. It's also a huge commercial opportunity.
Gabrielle, what do you feel that diverse founders can bring to a VC portfolio?
At Blackfin, so we have the VC fund for 1 year and a half, so it's very early to say about diversity, but I'm sure generally speaking, diversity into the VC game brings a lot of different point of view and many shades, I would say, in the appreciation and the assessment of business opportunities.
I wanted to know what were the main obstacles that you guys had been facing through your ways in this tech world. Who wants to begin, Anisah?
I guess following on from that question as well, is we fund primarily in underrepresented founders, so women, people of color, those who identify as LGBTQ, and people always say why, like why do you have to be diverse? It's our biggest challenge, and it's like because there's a huge market opportunity. If people aren't looking in these spaces, like people weren't looking for the ELVIEs of this world, which is a 50 billion industry, we're going to be the people who win at the end. So for us, the challenge is being quite early on in the game of saying we're only investing in underrepresented founders, convincing LPs that this is a real good business move. It's not a nice to have. We're not a charity. We're not an impact fund. We're a standard VC firm investing differently. And for us, showing that time and time again, explaining it to audiences like this is our challenge and our mission.
Yeah, and it's an investment thesis for you, right? Which is a discussed topic in the ecosystem. Like I had people telling me, yeah, no, Backstage Capital, it's not okay. It's not an investment thesis. But you're saying the opposite, right? That it can be as much as blockchain or AI or anything.
I think blockchain is a really good comparison, actually, because the people who are investing right now in blockchain are early. They're early. There isn't a ton of research into it, and there hasn't been a big exit to say, like a Facebook of this world, to pattern match against. We don't have anything to pattern match against yet. So we're early, but we say in the next 5 years there will be, I mean, we've already seen it this year, a bunch of amazing female founders who've IPO'd, Rent the Runway, Glossier, yesterday Away raised a ton of money, all female founders. There's a better gender group to pattern match against. Now we're starting to see people of color to pattern match against with the amazing energy firm in the US that just IPO'd, led by a black founder, I can't remember the name. In India, there's 2 founders now that are IPOing. Obviously, we've had Alibaba. So as the time goes on and there's more success stories, people like us won't seem weird anymore. It'll just be the norm and everyone will be looking everywhere to invest.
Tania, you're evolving in the hardware ecosystem. I was just talking with a woman telling me that investors are afraid in investing in hardware and even more afraid when it's led by a woman. Did you feel those obstacles when you were raising money at the beginning of ELVIE's life?
Yeah, and in terms of your question, what obstacles did I see raising money? Was it to do with being a female entrepreneur? Was it to do with hardware? Yes to all of the above, and I see a lot of women in the audience, and the reality is that if you're thinking about starting your own company and you walk into that pitch, you need to be prepared, but so do any men out there, that there will be certain biases against you, and some of them will be justified and some of them won't, but particularly ones, I walked in, it would be, yes, I'm a woman, yes, I'm slightly older than the average cohort for entrepreneurs, I'm mixed race, I'm a parent, I have no background in tech. Some of these, for example, with no background in tech, were probably justifiable concerns. So when you go in and pitch, ultimately what you need to do, my main tip would be, when you walk in there, you need to have that kind of air of nonchalance. I don't really need your money. I'm not that keen. But obviously there needs to be meticulous planning. And it's almost like there's no point denying that there might be these biases against you. You need to literally list out all the obstacles, all the reasons why the funder might not invest in you, and make sure you squash those assumptions right from the beginning, either directly or indirectly through what you say and how you behave.
We don't really have data about the deal flows, and it's something that Sista in France is trying to change. It's an organization that's trying to make VC give data about their deal flows. Do you girls feel like the deal flow and the choices the VC make is a real blocking point for women and diverse people coming in the tech industry?
the only data we have about the deal flow is about sectors or geographies or stages, but not about the founders, I would say, background. It wouldn't be so easy to monitor, and maybe it could be a good idea. I don't have enough feedback on this strategy, but for example, at Blackfin, we only invest in fintech startups, and within the fintech ecosystem, it's very hard to find female founders. I mean, in France, we have France FinTech shared some data about the founders, and so the deal flow we all shared as VCs, and we can see that 88% of the fintechs are founded by only male founding teams, whereas 3% of them are founded by only female founding teams, and 9% of them are mixed. So it's very hard to find female founders, and even if we tag them, I'm not sure it changed a lot for my specific field, but who knows. But sometimes, you know, when we see very few women, you remember them, and I think it's quite a positive thing to be a woman for a fintech CEO in France.
Are you at Backstage helping like other funds, like I would say traditional funds, to be more diverse? Are you doing that?
If they pay us, yeah. Like, this is the thing, right? Like, everyone thinks we should be helping other people, but you need to understand within your business, and your key stakeholders need to understand why this is a problem. Like, we're seeing a lot of people start scouting groups, so they have scouts to go out because they appreciate their deal flow isn't diverse enough, but there's a lot of problems with that in itself. So no, we don't help in the right way, but we co-invest with a lot of people, and that's how we do it. We're not a consultancy where we're supporting other funds. But those that we do co-invest with obviously get access to our deal flow. Those who are LPs in our funds, they also get access to that deal flow. But it's really understanding from the top down and down up why you're trying to be more diverse. Is it because you're suddenly got a load of media going, hey, there's 4 white guys who've hired another 4 white guys who've hired another 4 white guys, but you don't actually see the problem in that? Or is it you actually understand there's a business case for it and you want to start looking at how you change that? And the first place to look at that is how you reach out to your networks. Like, networks are such a problem in the VC world, because you need to know someone to get into VC. This idea of the warm intro culture, where I know you may know someone at Local Globe, you introduce me. But actually, how do we reach those people who don't have those networks? So how do we get into communities that are maybe a bit more siloed away, where tons of amazing ideas are coming out of? I mean, I met this amazing woman the other day who has started a fund for primarily Afro-tech hair. She's based in Kenya. And I said, why? She was like, because more people in the world have Afro hair than European hair. Yet when you go and speak to a VC, it's considered a niche market. That's bullshit. Like, it really is. Sorry, language, but it's okay. You're all adults. So we need to start changing the way we reach out to our networks, and scouts aren't necessarily the answer. There are lots of different ways.
I think you heard these niche market arguments, Tania, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I agree completely with Anisah. I think when you present to investors a proposition which they're not familiar with, their response will be that it's niche. And for us 5 years ago, that was the response we kept getting. And I kept saying, well, 51% of the population are women. How can that be niche?
Do you think that having female VC would be enough? Because I'm not sure. I think if you don't work on the biases, I mean, even women are sexist, like structurally, you know? So do you feel that having female VC is enough? And if not, what can we do to really get those VC understand better those kind of markets?
Sure, it won't be enough, but it's very important to get more diversity into the VC firm in order to wider the point of view, and to create more discussions about the choices. It's a job where you have to be pro or against every time when you see a new project, and so I'm sure diversity is a very key for performance, to drive performance. And diversity should be important for the whole value chain of the financing. I mean, for the LPs, for the VCs, for the entrepreneurs, of course. And so you can bring many initiatives for every step. I saw one initiative this last week that I enjoyed a lot. Maybe you saw it too. It was called VC Starter Kit. It's a website where you can buy the perfect outfit to look like a VC. So you have the shoes, the sneakers, the thing, I don't know the names, but
Patagonia jacket, all bird shoes.
Yeah, voilà, it's US stuff, and so you can buy it as a kit, and you have a premium kit where you can buy a villa next to the Hamptons, or I don't know where. Well, it was very funny, and so as many people, I tried to click to see how much it was, and just for kidding, and it was linked to an NGO of women VC based in the US called All Raise, and it was a joke, like just okay, so you're shocked about this lack of diversity, so don't buy it and promote diversity. And so I think this kind of initiative is very funny and can bring more diversity in a funny way.
Could you each give one really concrete thing that could help changing and going from theory to action in that topic? One really concrete thing you could think about.
Yeah, one, good. So understanding your bias is a really good way to start to see where you have more affinity for or lack of. Harvard do a free test online, which is a really useful way of trying to understand how your mind thinks and where you maybe lean towards or lean against without meaning to, so your unconscious sort of system. There's amazing training that people like Fearless Futures do to really help you within your company understand why this is important, what you can do to retain your staff, because so many people drop off the workforce, right? Women drop off, people of color drop off. There's hardly anyone of any disabilities visible in companies, and like zero at any senior level. So how do we improve these statistics? Another one is, if you're getting a new office, can you please make sure it's accessible? Like, does it have a lift? It's really silly, but I've gone to so many events where there literally isn't a lift. Like, how are people meant to even get into the door to meet people like us if they can't literally get into the door? So those are two really easy, practical things you can do. I may sound really angry, but I'm actually really optimistic because like tech is so young, right? Like it's only 30 years old. The web is only 30 years old. We celebrated it a few months ago. We have such a chance to change things, and probably everyone in this room has uber privilege, including myself, that we have to use. So yes, I'm angry because it's taken 30 years to get to this point, but we've got another 30 years before we like kick the bucket to make a huge change, and that's why I do it. So I think it's understand it, start to make the small changes, and get the key stakeholders involved. I know that's not one, but we all knew I wasn't going to just say one.
No problem. Tania, what would you say?
Do you mean, so what was the question, Deborah? Is it
if you had like one concrete thing that you could advise people to change to evolve from theory to action?
Yeah, I think for those of us who are building high growth startups, you know, we're always recruiting so quickly. And I think, as Anisah said, we tend to always hire from within our networks. And I sort of looked around ELVIE about a year ago and realized we weren't as diverse as I want us to be. So the one practical tip I would say is, if you're growing fast, just slow down a little bit to make sure that you make the extra effort to bring in a wider pool of candidates. And it might not always just be bringing women in. We had some teams that were just all women, so I wanted to see more diversity there.
What about you, Gabrielle?
I started working as a VC 6 years ago, and when I started as a VC, I decided with some friends to create a group of peers inspired by Sheryl Sandberg, Lenin. I know you know her, and it's very important for me now to have this gathering. Like we gather once every quarter, and we can share many stakes we have, personal, professional, in a very good. I would say it's very good mood, and it's very important for me. And I think this kind of place to discuss with peers it can be very helpful.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left, so you each have 1 minute to tell us what will the tech world look like in 5 years if everything goes according to your plan. Tania, can you begin?
Sorry, I was just looking at the screen or something. In 5 years, what the tech world would look like? Well, I think, like I said at the beginning, it's about bringing in that cognitive diversity. And I think at the moment in tech, and particularly VC-funded tech, VC investors are often looking at pattern recognition. And if you actually start bringing in more diverse thinking, I think we'll end up in a very different place. So how would that play out? Even the typical VC model around, building up a company and then exiting within 7 years at a 5 to 7x return, I think we'll actually start redefining what success looks like. And I think if we had a more diverse set of founders, more diverse teams, more creativity, that would bring more creativity. I think here in Europe, instead of the problem that we see at the moment, which is a lot of startups selling out too early, I think we'll end up with more billion-dollar businesses. And I actually think we'll end up with a better society, because I think once you bring that creativity in, and I think particularly with female founders, the stats do show that women are more interested in some of the areas which have more societal impacts.
What about you, Anisah?
I just agree with everything you just said. I have nothing to add. I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is things like this will no longer exist. Someone just said that we're preaching to the choir. Yeah, we probably are in this format, but hopefully the video goes online and more people see it, and you go and speak to stakeholders, etc. We'll talk about that in a second. But Backstage Capital won't exist. It will just be a normal VC fund, because everyone will be doing this stuff. I won't run a coding school for women, because I won't need to, because the next generation will come through and they will think about things differently, and it won't need this kind of consideration. I hope we're all just able to get to the point where we're able to innovate equally and be able to bring equity in instead of equality, where we bring the people up that need it, and we use our privilege in the right way.
So, just quick, so you want to do yourself out of a job, basically?
I really want to retire in the Bahamas. Like, I'm done in 5 years.
Gabrielle, what about you?
So we are not focused on any balance regarding recruitment, but we encourage a lot the application of female intern. We are not recruiting a lot of VC, so.
Okay. Maybe just one last question that it's pretty interesting. It seems like you've been preaching the core in this format. How can you reach the people who make the decision and benefit from the status quo? That's a very interesting question.
Hire people, right? So everyone in big companies tends to hire one person of color who tends to be a woman, who may have some form of disability at C level, and they're the head of diversity and inclusion. Don't do that. Don't make the only person who looks different be the head of D&I, but get consultants in to work with you, understand where changes can be made. There are different ways to hire, so beapplied.com is an amazing website that helps you sort of remove the bias of hiring, look at applications in a different way. It's a very big question, but get the right people into your companies to do this at a more individual level that's tailored to you. This is a really good way at getting that little fire ignited, but go back and actually do the work. This is not doing the work. You're chilling, having a great time. You're probably going to go get some free food and drinks in a bit. Use this to go back and actually do the work and pay people to do it. Don't ask people to do it for free. It's not a charity. It's good for you, and it's good for the people who are working too.
One last word. We have 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think right now we're in the middle of such a huge feminist surge, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's more about equal rights for women. And obviously I am a complete feminist, but in answer to that question, a lot of the decision making is with men. And I see some female entrepreneurs kind of almost pushing that away and avoiding it, which I think is what the question is asking. For me, I embrace it. We have a lot of ELVIE men. Our biggest investors are all men, and they get it. They have wives, daughters, mothers, and they get what we're doing, and they're supporting us on that journey. So I would just say, bring everybody in.
All right. Thank you very much, girls, for being here. Thank you for joining us, and have a great VivaTech.